Oh boy, what better time than now during 24 hours of Cover Killer Nation to talk about this monster. I know it's a couple of months late, but time and shit happens, that's all I'll say. Alkaloid with the MALKUTH Grimoire. This is a supergroup, and whenever you consider some of the bands that are involved with memberships, then you'll kind of understand why that's the case. We're talking groups such as Obscura, we're talking Dark Fortress, Necrophragist, we're talking people who are or have been in groups such as Blotted Science, who have been in or are currently in Aborted. There's so many groups that are really represented here in one way or the other. And the membership is certainly one thing that causes expectations. The expectations, of course, are the fact that this is no doubt going to be a monster of an album, and at 73 minutes in length, that's certainly true. And from the very moment that Carbon Phrases really starts up and kicks in, you start to understand that this is going to be definitely a unique experience. In fact, just by looking at the song titles themselves, you can understand that this is going to be one that has a bit of a technical idea behind it, but really the real technicality that you are looking for, the real technicality that's going to be the excelled idea is going to be the musicality. The musicality is certainly the highlight here. The musicality is certainly what takes the cake, because this is interesting work. It's unique work, and it's work that does not see the need to be the same throughout each and every song. I like songs such as Carbon Phrases and From a Hadron Machinist because they're long enough that it gives the narrative and the song the ability to really open up and breathe and expose itself, almost like flashing a listener, and it opens up a wealth of possibilities for this very talented lineup, and they're able to execute this very, very well. This is not a group that necessarily, throughout the entirety of this album, needs to wow you with their technical wizardry and their musical charm. It's instead something where they're able to use the space and use the time very wisely in order to craft something that has a lot of musical character to it. It's something that actually builds its tone and builds its atmosphere throughout each and every song, as opposed to needing to slap you in the face with it directly as the track begins and until it ends. It's instead one that's able to build almost like through storytelling. There's exposition and plot and a body, there's conflict, and there's resolution. A lot of people will reference Cthulhu as a pretty awesome track, track number 3. It's a little bit shorter than the first two. It only clocks in at a little bit less than 6 minutes in length, but it's one that has a really direct chorus, and it's one where you can start to see the character of the band morph a little bit. It's something where this group can also handle these shorter tracks, these shorter movements, and really still maintain a high level of consistency and also a high level of musical integrity. They really go after things very proactively. And I have to say that on this album, the guitar work is absolutely top-notch. Absolutely top-notch. There are some fantastic guitar moments on this record. And it's certainly one of the highlights that make it a bona fide contender for Surprise of the Year, considering this kind of came completely out of left field, even though the news of the band forming had already been present. But it still came out of left field that it came out and immediately it was this good and pretty much this well received. This band even goes one step further and opts to go for something that's not new territory whatsoever. Not by any stretch of the imagination. This has been going on for 40 years, but a four-part track, Dyson Sphere, which just it's a very, very unique idea. And I go back and I immediately think of like the Autotheist movement by the Faceless, and I reference that a lot because it really has become one of the new standards for really how to execute a multi-part song and make each part very individual and give it a good characteristic while still tying it all together. But Dyson Sphere is able to really maintain itself and kind of resolve itself the very same way. Really from the first moments of Mining the Orth Cloud all the way to Sol Omega, which is part 4. You have 4 tracks that are a bit shorter in nature that really assemble into a whole, but they are each very, very important and each represent an individual movement and moment in time in this storyline. And the execution is probably one of the best factors on this. The execution is flawless. I feel like Funeral for a Continent, which is the last track on this album, a mammoth monster, we're talking close to 13 minutes in length by itself, really left this album on a high note. I think it did. I think it actually executes exactly what needs to be executed on a final track. It reminds me a lot, not in musical characteristic, but just in idea, of White Walls by Between the Buried and Me off of Colors. It reminds me of that because Colors was already a solid disc, and White Walls accented the ending of this entire movement of Colors with just fury, with charm. It really was almost like Between the Buried and Me throwing each and every part of their collective musical being into a pot, stirring it up, pissing in it, shitting in it, puking in it, stirring it up some more, and throwing some other crap in it, and instead of it smelling like, you know, fried guitar bits and leftover human waste, it came out smelling amazing because the song itself actually became one of the highlights of the album. And I feel that Funeral for a Continent by the Alkaloid really does the exact same thing. I feel that this is really representative of not only what this grouping of individuals is capable of, but it also really showcases what they are capable of further on down the line. It actually showcases the scary thought that evolution within this band is still a very, very real possibility. And it's something that, when it happens, it's not an if, it's a when, whenever you consider this pantheon. When it happens, holy shit. Some may say that it's going to be difficult for the Alkaloid to top this album. I'd say that there are some flaws. At times, it does feel like it has a lot to offer, but does lack a little bit. It just sort of drones a little. Either that, or it doesn't necessarily get to the point a little bit quick enough, or it tries to execute things a bit too rushed, and the whole thing can feel a little bit disjointed. And I also feel this is an album that will certainly not be for everybody. This is one where musicians, this is one where true progressive death metal fans, or progressive fans in general, will love the pieces off of because of just how creative that it is, and just how different that it is, and how it sort of takes the idea of progressive death metal and it sort of reminds you of the explorations of bands such as Edge of Sanity, only without being more directly in, you know, on the side of the death metal, and more so on the side of progressive and technical death metal. But aside from that, this album has really changed a lot of perspectives. It's definitely a disc that deserves to be listened to at least once, but it's certainly an album that probably is more deserving of 3 to 4 to 5 to 10 listens. Simply because this is where the genre could be heading. Actually, this is more so where the genre has been heading, but it's actually the perfect poster child for how to do a progressive death metal album correctly. I would give this album an 87 out of 100. A beautiful disc. Absolutely magnificent. Certainly a contender, but I want to know what you guys think about this disc. Let me know in the comments below, and we're going to get moving on to the next one. 24 Hours of CKN. The tiredness is real. My cat's meowing because it just woke up. Lucky him. Peace.